Greetings. We are a group of interdimensional beings speaking to you on behalf of the Galactic Federation, and more importantly, we represent the wishes of all that is. Today, we would like to speak to you about the nature of your reality and how this relates to your progression to the fifth dimension. As discussed in our past episodes, we briefly touched on these subjects. However, we would like to delve a bit deeper into this subject. All that is, as we know this energy, is the energy of creation. This energy came into existence by acknowledging that it was an awareness, and by this knowing, it began to explore itself through movement. As it moved, it became aware of itself, and it felt this movement. It then began to imagine what this movement would look like, as it wished to see what this energy was that it was feeling. And so light came into existence. As this energy began to perceive this energy being birthed, light emerged. It began to feel a joy within its being, and so it began to hum as it vibrated in an emotion of happiness and joy. This humming sound was birthed into what we now know as the sound of Om. This sound has no religious connotations or religious lineage. It is just the purity that was birthed out of the sound of joy and pleasure from having created light. As this being explored this creation of light, and it heard itself vibrate with the sound of its own pleasure, it began to immerse itself in this incredible energy of light and sound. As it moved and twisted itself, and it played with these images that were being created out of this movement of light and sound. This was the birthing of the cosmos and the many universes in their very initial states of being. As this being progressed in its creation, it began to watch that these creations began to move among themselves by the energy that was created around them. As it observed these movements, it found that each burst of light, or a universe as we now know it, had their own unique environment. These environments began to develop and evolve by themselves based on the energy that was surrounding them and interacting with each other. Things began to happen. Some of these energies began to form into particles, and these particles began to grow to become large masses of rocks and stones, forming planets and planes that still moved and formed patterns within their own unique environment. Upon further observation, things began to be seeded on these formations as they formed into foliage and trees to cover the surface of these planes and spheres. Again, reactions and exchanges began to take place between these newer creations as they interacted with their environment and began to create moisture, and water began to be formed, and these formations grew and became rivers and oceans. While all of this was taking place, the energy of all that is was going through a diverse array of emotions, from joy, happiness, curiosity, expansion, creativity, love, awe, pleasure, and many other such positive emotions. As it explored all of these emotions, it began to wonder about the opposite of these emotions, because it began to perceive that there was a polarity in everything that it had observed. Where there was light, darkness was its polarity. For the dry, there was wet, etc., etc. And so it began to wonder about the polarity of emotions, as it had not yet experienced this polarity. And so it began to imagine what this might be like. As it was imagining these things, it began to experience a heavy energy begin to surround its energy field, and it began to be enveloped in this field of darkness. It watched and found that all of the positive emotions that it had experienced earlier, like joy and pleasure, disappeared as these emotions of what it was feeling, as a nervous energy began to permeate its being. It began to feel uncomfortable and shake and tremble. It wished for this energy to dissipate and be removed from its being, and so it did. This energy receded, and the light began to fill its being again, and it was able to see its beauty once again, and its being was filled with love and gratitude. It discovered that this feeling of gratitude to be back within the field of light and love was a very powerful energy, as it had experienced a sense of feeling very lost in the darkness, and so the energy to be pulled back away from the darkness was a very strong and powerful energy, that it felt grateful to be in the light and joy again. This being recognized that this feeling of gratitude was an expression of balance, and that if it stayed in this balanced energy, it was able to see both spectrums of darkness and light, and enjoy the polarity of both sides of what was being created from this unique perspective. As it began to explore, it found that this principle could be applied to all nature of reality and creation. Today, in this day and age, as things have progressed a great deal from these early creations, the energy known as all that is still applies this principle to all of its evolutions. This being has shared this knowledge with us, as it applies this principle to what is taking place on your earth plane at this time, and as an extension of this knowledge we share it with you. Gaia, as we like to call the earth plane, has been a positive polarity where she has been the womb of many civilizations. She, through her evolution, became the envy of many other beings and planes of existence within the universe. This envy was then transmitted to the beings on other planes of existence, who heard about this plane of existence as they did not have the abundance that she had, as their planes of existence were dry and arid, and so they wished to experience what it would be like to live upon her plane. So as the beings from these arid planes of existence came to explore, they wished to obtain her for themselves. They plundered and raided her surface and made this plane their home. However, over time, the two suffered because they were not in balance. Gaia could not tolerate the extreme negative influence these beings were having on her planes. The beings that existed on her planes were unable to survive as they were meant to. But both sides were stuck, as they were unable to wrench themselves from this toxic cosmic embrace. All that is, from its vast knowledge, observed this from its perspective of balance and in gratitude, thanked these two energies for showing themselves in these very stark and extreme perspectives of themselves. From this place of gratitude, it wished for them to each be liberated, so that they might live in peace and harmony as they were meant to be within their own designated environments. The separation of these two energies is what is being experienced now upon your plane of existence. This action is an expanded perspective of what is taking place. The outer layers of this separation have already happened, as the embrace has been untangled with the removal of the Draco-Reptilian and Orion Greys from your reality, thus liberating Gaia and its inhabitants from this toxic embrace. With the release of this energy, the matrix of low energy frequency that was created around the earth plane is beginning to dissipate, as the plane and its inhabitants begin to take large gasps of air for the first time in a very long time. This air happens to be the purest form of energy, as this explosion of photonic energy is permeating the Earth's surface as she moves through the photon belt. With this new burst of energy and light, all that is extending its energetic hand to the beings on the Earth plane to open their eyes, breathe in this purity, and to realize that they have been liberated from the confines of their dark experience, and now have the freedom as sovereign beings to explore the light, and to do this in a balanced fashion so that they may not be attacked by the darkness again. This, of course, can be done through the principle of gratitude. As you awaken and you experience the light, try to feel this gratitude in your heart and know that you are awakening to your own self-discovery as your soul experiences the light. Move through this and be aware of the darkness as the full realization that you have experienced this darkness and that you respect its power, but that you would like to keep your distance from it. We encourage you to explore these emotions within your own life, applying this principle to any and all experience you might have encountered within your own incarnation, and explore the emotion of gratitude as a balancing factor to either the positive or negative polarity. This will set you free. We will leave you now in peace and joy upon your path, and ask that you explore our YouTube channel for more topics of discussion, in addition to our book, which goes into detail about many of these topics. Blessings.